So this is just before 09:05 hours GMT. 5 minutes past, just before 5 minutes past 9 in the morning of Friday, the 28th of May 2021. And this is the part A. Whatever it says on the banner, it is part A of the KhoodeelaarTV television channel. We're starting broadcasting for the day, carrying out the world exclusive diagnosis of Fleet Street, which effectively means, in simple terms, that we are exposing the supply of lies, perpetration of lies by the Fleet Street newspapers. And the Financial Times, which we have renamed Financial Crimes based on the contents and the role, is continuing to perpetuate underplaying the impact of the corrupt, lying behavior, opportunistic policies, criminal abuse of public post by the cabal fronted by Boris Johnson. And this one was on display in the House of Commons on Thursday, yesterday. And his name on the evidence of his behavior, we have renamed him as Matt Hand Crook. And it is so elastic. I mean, it could be used as Matt got into post, Hans Crook. Henceforth, he became a crook. And the Financial Crimes has the audacity to run a banner item called Crypto Criminals, How Digital Proceeds of Crime Are Cashed In on the Dark Web. Now, the crypto criminals, of course, are only one category of criminals. Even the so-called legitimate internet outlets are stealing money from people's accounts, bank accounts, because once a particular purchase is made by a particular buyer and customer, consumer, then the details of their bank account are saved by the tech company, which has got all the security code, etc., included in the file, and they can steal money. And they do steal money. And as we said, this is the main stable way that big tech giants that are trading on the internet or via the internet or collecting payments online, they steal billions. They're stealing billions of pounds or the billions of dollars equivalents of people's money without the people having given them any consent, having entered into any contract, having given them absolutely any permission to take the money. So they're stealing money. And most of the thefts are not followed up either by the victims or by any regulatory operation. There is no regulatory operation in place in Britain to even notice, even to monitor the fact that daily billions of pounds and dollars equivalents of money being stolen by these tech companies. So it's a default. What they're doing is they're getting away with this. They're stealing the money and they're getting away with the theft by default because nobody is following them up. And there is no actual notice or audit because nobody is following them up of actual amount or amounts that they're stealing every day. And I don't think that the crypto criminals item in the financial crimes is recognizing what I have just said. So this is part of the diagnosis of Fleet Street, which is sick with lies and denials and half-truths. So on page 10, and the page 10 piece on the crypto criminals is not even headed as crime. It says virtual halls. A hall is not necessarily a crime. Hall is a collection. Hall is an accumulation. Hall is the amassing of anything. So it doesn't automatically refer to or mean theft, let alone robbery. So here is the piece that the financial crimes is underplaying. And it says that forensics experts tracking transaction flows are locked in a battle with bad actors. And again, there is no crime that they are acknowledging. So what they're saying in the first paragraph is that in online crime, anonymous cryptocurrencies are the payment method of choice. But at some point, virtual halls must be turned into hard cash. Enter the treasure man. Finding a treasure man is easy if you know where to look. They're listed for hire on Hydra, the largest marketplace on the dark web by revenues, a part of the internet that is not visible to search engines and requires software to access. They will literally leave bundles of cash somewhere for you to pick up, said Tom Robinson, chief scientist and co-founder of Elliptic, which tracks and analyzes crypto transactions. They bury it underground or hide it behind a bush, and they will tell you the coordinates. There is a whole profession. Now, this is only one set of theft that is taking place on the internet. Whether it's dark or whether it's not dark or in the light makes no difference, because essentially the transactions that take place are mostly unaudited. Even by the big techs like Apple, don't honor the basic requirements of acknowledgement of receipt. They don't issue receipt. And our organization is directly involved in the evidence that I've just referred to about Apple. That has happened this week, and we are still waiting to see the response by Apple to the solid assertion made to it that it had failed it was a personnel transaction made at an Apple store in London, and it's a transaction that involved payment of cash amount for 3 items. And the largest amount has not been received or acknowledged by Apple. Now, if Apple can do that, and we are giving direct evidence, then any other tech giant or tech operation can do that and is doing that. We also know about other tech companies, and for legal reasons, we are just withholding giving details at this moment. We shall update accordingly. eBay is one of the others that is unreliable and completely obstructive and allows its outlets to tell lies and to create obstructions in order to keep money and fail or refuse to deliver the goods. That is going on. So we are not going to talk more about the cryptocurrency because this is just a small part of the big tech giants robbery taking place every day, worth billions and trillions of pounds and trillions of dollars equivalent. Now, here is a piece about the so-called media and Paul Dacre. Now, Paul Dacre is a notorious racist liar. And for too long, he was in the post as editor of the daily Racist Mail. Now, before he got the job at the Daily Mail, Dacre was an editor of the Times, Murdoch-owned Times. And Dacre suppressed and his so-called letters editor suppressed dozens of letters that I wrote challenging Libby Parvert. Now, Libby Parvert was given a platform by the BBC program on Radio 4 called Midweek. And Libby Parvert is a racist, criminal liar. She's a typical Fleet Street kind of type of journalist, racist, liar, idiot. The idiocy is based on the stupidity and ignorance of the subject concerned. And she had published a cruel piece justifying cruelty and violence against a cat in the Times. And that actually prompted me to write the letters. Look, these are issues that I addressed in that context more than 30 years ago. That is when Dacre was still in post as the editor of the Dirty Digger Murdoch's Times. Now here, the Financial Times is talking about this Ofcom. Now, as we posted yesterday, there has been no regulation. There is no regulation in Britain. Full stop. So all these Ofcom, Ofsted, local government ombudsman, etc., these are bogus organizations. They don't actually do what they're claimed to be in existence to do. And in the context of the reference to Ofcom, I go back to the 1970s. And there was a man, secretary of the National Union of Journalists, and I was an active member of the National Union of Journalists. And there was a man called Morgan, the Welshman Morgan, who was the secretary of the National Union of Journalists, who after he left the National Union of Journalists, got a job at what later became Press Complaints Commission. Now, the Press Complaints Commission is, of course, the so-called regulatory body, was the so-called regulatory body allegedly to regulate Fleet Street and other print papers and print media. It did nothing of the sort. And Morgan, who was appointed chief executive of the Press Complaints Commission or its equivalent, sent me a reply, one reply concerned, which had two types of content. One was typewritten and one was by his hand. And the reason why he put something by hand was so that it didn't get stored or archived or kept in the formal kind of contents. And that showed Morgan's own dishonesty. Now, Morgan was not the only dishonest person that I have encountered, but he was typical because he was identifiable because he was an occupant in a post in the National Union of Journalists, and then he became employed by the so-called equivalent of Press Complaints Commission. And the fact that he decided to send me the reply in two modes and two parts shows that he was admitting, in effect, my allegations that I had made in the communications that he was addressing or answering or he was referring to, including the fact that the Press Complaints Commission or whatever the thing was a lying outfit, and it was in denial and it was not in existence to process or look into complaints against newspapers. So he was admitting, because he was saying one thing on the record and he was saying completely different thing on the off record, if you like, his handwritten version, which wasn't, I assume, kept as part of the record. But if it is, then it will be astonishing. But that is what the Press Complaints Commission was. And before it became Ofcom, off is a kind of obscene kind of thing, isn't it? It has got a swear word which ends with off. But this is not the off, the spelling, it's a single F. But it reminds of the double F, off. This off was foisted on the public mind and the minds of the many during Tony Blair and Gordon, the racist liar Brown's kind of years in post, in government. Off. And it's completely off. Well, it became wider spread than it was before Blair got in May 1997. And the fact that this is off, and I'm talking about off rather than the particular divisions between these various disciplines, so-called, is to bring home the actual agenda that these corrupt and corruptly confected outlets were conceived of and put in place to perpetrate. And that is to deny, as the Press Complaints Commission was, deny that there was any complaints against the press or could be any complaints against the press. And Ofcom is a complete embarrassment, and it's a criminal perpetration of lies and denials on behalf of the main broadcasting outlets and the other kind of telephone operators and internet operators, etc., etc. Whatever the listed areas of remit for Ofcom, these areas are just there for display. They're not there as intended to be rigorously examined and regulated and investigated whatsoever. So you've got Ofcom, which is a corrupt outfit. You've got the Information Commission, which is a corrupt outfit. You've got the so-called local government ombudsman, which is completely corrupt, absolutely disgracefully criminal and corrupt and in denial. And the same thing, the off what and off energy and off whatever. They're all outfits that exist essentially to deny the duty and to deny the existence of the grounds and the facts and the evidence of the duties, of the wrongdoings that the duties are actually warranted on. So in the culture, the political culture in this country, there is no regulation. And this blank, this emptiness has pre-existed the kind of creation in the 1940s of the likes of the various international forums and platforms and conventions and statements and declarations. So going back and covering the available, accessible, publicly accessible records of what went on 200 years ago, 300 years ago, it is impossible to come across anything remotely similar to what is supposedly created under these regulatory kind of regimes, and there is no regulation. And so when Tony Blair and Gordon Brown deregulated whatever pretense regulation was in existence for various things, they really didn't have to do much because there was no regulation beforehand. So whatever they did in order to relax the regulation completely made the main big business, corporations, councils, government departments, and other sellers and peddlers and traders completely immune. So in effect, in Britain, over the last, let's say 300 years. Why 300 years? Because 300 years is about the number of years since the post of Prime Minister was created. How do I come to that? Because this financial crimes piece is referring to Johnson, the incumbent in the post of Prime Minister. And he is demanding a rerun of the Ofcom chief executive post. Why? Because the liar wanted this liar criminal Decker in post. So he's interfering with the process. And there is nothing that actually shows that he is even bothering to recognize any objective standard or criteria. He is interfering. And that is what he and others in various executive posts are allowed to do. In other words, they are being treated with impunity. They can do whatever. There is no rule of law, there is no due process, there is no objectivity, there is no neutrality. And what happened with the pandemic money, millions of pounds being given to Matt Hancock's mates, is exactly that. Impunity. They behaved with impunity and they abused the money, millions of pounds, and they gave to members of their own family. And Hancock himself is involved as a beneficiary in one or more than one of the projects that was given funding without any due diligence. This slogan is the due diligence, which is treated with contempt by the criminals in post. So this reminds me of what an American writer visiting then East Pakistan wrote. about East Pakistan. He said that the evidence that he saw of people's adherence to any rules, any morality, any ethics, the evidence was overwhelmingly that people didn't bother about morality, ethics, or due diligence or neutrality. And he said, and as these qualities and values are essential for a society to function, and as those things are not present in the most cases that I have witnessed, the writer said, then I am forced to conclude that there must be a God who is running the country. The East Pakistan that I refer to is, of course, now Bangladesh. And the same analytical observation applies to Bangladesh. Because in the behavior of the state, there is no morality, no ethics, no accountability, nothing. And yet, it appears to be, quote, working. And there must be a God, therefore. Now, going back to this piece on page 2 of the Financial Crimes today about media, and Boris Johnson is demanding that Ofcom, appointment of the chief executive of Ofcom is rerun because Paul Dacre was rejected as new chair, the chief executive chair. Whatever it is, it's only a formality, it's not a difference of substance, chief executive or chair, whatever. So let's read this piece written by 3 of them. One is Alex Barker, the other is George Parker, and the third one is Nick Fields. Boris Johnson has ordered a rerun of the process to approve a new Ofcom chair after an assessment panel unanimously rejected his favored candidate, Paul Dacre. The former editor of the Daily Mail newspaper, according to people involved in the decision. Now, Johnson is behaving as if the whole country belongs to him, as he said to Jennifer Arcuri. When, during the period of his sexual relationship with Jennifer Arcuri, they were out in the open in London, some street, some public place, and he attempted to kiss her. And she pointed out to him that they were in public place and they should be not behaving in that way. And he said, well, I'm the mayor. I don't care. It's my city. I don't care. Now that is so brazen. So when the Financial Crimes is writing this kind of stupid piece by not 1, 2, 3 of them, they should be talking about the fact that he's interfering. That is the main offense of the piece. It's not like running as a sewer. They're running as a sewer and retelling the fact that he's interfering. He's directly taking part in the appointment of Ofcom, now completely messing up even the most basic idea and purpose for the existence of this regulator. That it should be objective, it should be non-partisan and free from any independent. He is defeating all the concepts of independence, non-interference. And they should not be peddling this in the way that they're doing it. They should be pointing this out, what I'm saying. This Financial Times piece, the Financial Times piece, is stupid, idiotic, and it describes Ofcom in these glorious terms. Ofcom is one of Europe's most powerful communications watchdogs. That is a criminally uttered and perpetrated lie. It's not a watchdog at all. If by watchdog they are meaning that it audits and holds to account various decision makers and perpetrators. And the whole piece is a complete, absolute, pathetic peddling. It is not for the many, it's not for the seekers of the truth. And just above that piece is a larger, longer piece about another watchdog. And it's headed, Chief admits audit watchdog was not up to the job. Exactly what I have said about the Ofcom and the Press Complaints Commission, etc. And this is the chief of the so-called Financial Reporting Council. Now, right throughout our analysis, we are exclusively doing the world exclusive diagnosis, and we are asserting on the facts, only based on evidence, what we are asserting. And we are asserting that there is no regulatory regime about anything in Britain. There has never been. So what Napoleon Bonaparte allegedly said is a nation of shopkeepers. We are updating. It's not a shopkeeper, nation of cheats, fraudsters, and liars. By nation, we refer to the ones occupying the posts in government, in the name of government, in parliament and elsewhere, and in the media, of course. And then there is the other piece about Rishi Sunak. Rishi Sunak is defending the behavior, the corrupt, sleazy behavior of David Cameron and Lex Greensill in their dealings with the finance department, which Sunak allegedly represents as a member of the cabinet, in the cabinet fronted by Johnson, who is being described as unfit by Dominic Cummings. Now, for 15 years or more, we have been calling Boris Johnson unfit for public office, full stop. So to us, this is not a news item at all. And a piece in the Financial Crimes on the page 6 today is headed, Democracy Remains in Danger as Republicans stick to Trump course. Well, democracy has never been out of danger in the USA. Never. Despite the hype about the Constitution and the founding fathers, etc., democracy has never been established in the USA. And there is a rare piece about pet ownership. It says about a company called Pets at Home, and its sales have topped £1 billion. Now, the first paragraph, Pets at Home's annual revenues have surpassed £1 billion for the first time, driven by a surge in pet ownership across the United Kingdom during the lockdown. So that is a summary that is accurate enough for that context. But we shall talk about the costs of looking after the health of pets, in particular, health of kittens. Now, kittens is a word we use generically to refer to cats of all ages. So, kittens is the preferable word that we use. So, there is evidence that the industry that is fronted by veterinary surgeons, vets, is a corrupt industry, criminal industry. It's a cruel market. And it's not about helping the animals, let alone helping the people who love the animals and look after the animals and live with the animals. And this is a worldwide crime and criminal enterprise that is hundreds of billions pounds and dollars worth for the traders. Now, just as a contextual reference to professional persons given license to practice or trade in particular professions, like our original diagnostic description of licensed law traders. This is the collective name for barristers, solicitors, legal executives that have got professional bodies supposedly kind of regulating them. Again, the question of regulation, it's a complete joke. These are criminal gangs that operate under the or behind the kind of description of professional bodies. Like, for example, the barristers have got 4 inns of court: Lincoln's Inn, Gray's Inn, Inner Temple, and Middle Temple, all of them based in London. And between Chancery Lane and the Strand, and the other side of the road, the bank of the Thames River. Now, these are criminal organizations that issue licenses to people to practice as barristers, the Inns of Court. And for centuries, these have done that. And there is no requirement. There is no real requirement to ascertain or test for suitableness or suitability, the abilities, let alone the willingness on the part of the license seekers and license holders. Well, that is a serious part of the reason why the courts bureaucracies are corrupt and are a barrier to justice, a denier of justice or deniers of justice. And the same applies to the counterpart for the solicitors. The Law Society, which has got the Solicitors Regulation Authority, which has got the Solicitors Disciplinary Tribunal. These are all sham operations. Less than 1%. Less than 1% of the actual cases are even heard, if ever. And most of the hearings end with the criminals perpetrating license holders being excused. And the third one is for the legal executives. Institute of Legal Executives, the same. So these are the lawyers thing, and there is nothing for the crooked, corrupt, racist, incompetent, ignorant members of the judiciary. If you read the reasoning, so-called, the ones that are published, because many of the rulings are not published, are not allowed to be published. Again, a criminality and criminal denial of transparency by the system, which is corrupt, therefore, which is criminal, therefore. And thereby and the spread of the pieces, the so-called opinion pieces in the financial crimes by their so-called regular columnists. These pieces are completely generic and they are completely based on the agenda to support the corrupt, criminal, oppressive, and dishonest and unfair status quo. And there is an item about the data privacy about the NHS. So here is the one about the plan to share NHS data, and the financial crimes is saying that the sharing should not go ahead. And it starts from the doctor's surgery. It says, a doctor's surgery is a place of trust where patients divulge their most private concerns and ailments. On 1st of July, a vast pooling of surgery records will begin in England, with the NHS sharing data scraped from as many as 55 million patients. It is an exercise lacking in transparency that risks eroding that trust at a time when the health service is held in high regard. The plans must be rethought urgently. English surgeries hold digitized decades-long records on an entire population, almost a unique data trove in the world. The pandemic has shown how invaluable such a large data set is when it comes to rapid treatment. The idea is to now use it to improve planning for the next health emergency and better target health campaigns. Unfortunately, the government has not explained adequately how the NHS will safeguard patients' records or which third parties will have access to them, albeit pseudonymized. A threat of legal action now looms. Attempts by NHS Digital, which runs the health system's IT system, to assuage concerns leave more questions than answers. It says that it does not sell data, but that it does charge organizations for access. Now, what this shows is what I've said before. There is no regulation. I mean, this is the exact opposite of regulation. This is opening up personal data to the world's criminals and Britain's criminals, as if they had not already had access prior to this so-called legalized exposition of personal data to robbery, abuse, and danger. So we shall be continuing in the next part